Hello, everybody that is joined our session today. We've started bang on midday, and I can see a fair few people have already joined in, which is fantastic. So we have a full crowd today. So far, there's nearly 30 people here. So this is fantastic. So I think we'll get started considering the amount we've got to show you today. So today's session is one of our OneKloudX user events that we host every quarter. The last one we had was around the 2023.1 release, where we showcase some of the new functionalities that have come out in that release. And today is an extension of that, coupled with what was broadcasted and communicated via the Suite Connect event in Sydney, I think nearly over a month ago now. So there's been a few additions to the NetSuite product family and modules as part of Suite Connect. And one of those we'll be showcasing today with the lovely Hannah, who's helping us out today to show some of these solutions. As well as there was workforce management that was also released as well, which includes time and attendance rostering for those organizations that manage people and within their organization from a time and roster perspective. So that's great. So today we have a full packed agenda. It's going to be pretty much a full hour on the dot for what we want to show you. So the agenda today is planning and budgeting. So we want to take you through the NetSuite planning and budgeting solution, because I know it's that time of year where everyone's managing their budgets and trying to get it all over the line. So we'll take you through and showcase some of the functionality around the planning and budgeting. This is the NetSuite planning and budgeting, not the NetSuite budgets that you're probably used to, that you upload from Excel spreadsheet. This is the full-blown what-if analysis sort of budgeting and planning solution in NetSuite. And then we'll also take you through the analytics warehouse today as well. So this is the NetSuite BI solution that has come out as well, and has full-blown connectors between NetSuite and the BI solution. So yeah, I'll pass it over to Hannah in a sec and get her to introduce herself. But before we do that, you'll notice that in the actual session there is a particular chat session, a chat function. So if you look at your top right hand corner of your screen, I think there's two bubbles. There's a chat there. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, and then I'll jump in and either answer them or ask Hannah to answer those questions on the fly. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Hannah. Thank you, Hannah.
All right, thank you, Rob. I'll just wait. Once you stop sharing your screen, I can go ahead and share mine. Perfect, thank you. All right, so I think now everybody can see my screen. So as promised, I'm going to be talking today about NetSuite's planning and budgeting solution, which is, as Rob said, full-on add-on forecasting, planning, scenario planning, what-if versioning, full-blown budgeting solution. And also we'll be looking at our analytics warehouse as well. So before I kick off, just a quick safe harbor statement, just a reminder that the following presentation is intended to outline our general product direction. It is for informational purposes only, may not be incorporated into any contract. I won't read the whole blurb, but just to make sure you have a quick glance over that before I jump in. So before I kick off, a quick introduction to who am I? I am a Principal Solution Consultant at Oracle NetSuite. I've worked closely with OneKloudX on many deals and events in the past. I have been with NetSuite rapidly approaching 7 years at this point. I spent the first 3 years or so of that in the London team, and then I was working with new business customers at that point before making the move over to Australia. And at that point, I jumped over to the account management organization. So now I work predominantly or almost exclusively with existing customers. So as part of that move over to the account management side, I've started to focus and specialize in some of our new add-on modules, including NSPB and NSAW. So I'm sure you have all seen some form of news over the past year or two. And if you have been reading any form of news or listening to any form of news or using any form of social media for that matter, you've probably heard that things are looking a little bit uncertain. We've got pretty high inflation everywhere. Interest rates have been going up, up, up. There's lots of talk of the next financial crisis. Are we going into a recession? What's going to happen next in terms of interest rates? And with that level of uncertainty, it's really important that as a business, we are able to plan and prepare and adapt to change. And that is exactly where these two analytics and planning tools come in. So both NSPB and NSAW really designed to help businesses in uncertain economic and business environments, which is exactly where we are today. So in terms of my agenda for the next hour or just under an hour, I'll start off just by talking about, well, what's the difference? We've got these two products even, they're individual products, they're not the same. So what do we use them for? Why would I want one and why would I want the other? And from there, I'll jump into a little bit more detail on both of them. We'll start off with an overview of NetSuite planning and budgeting. And then from there, we'll move to the analytics warehouse. And I'll be focusing on what is included, what does the solution do, and also be giving a little bit of a solution demo for both of them. As Rob said, do feel free to post your questions in the chat as we go along, but hopefully we will leave a few minutes at the end where I can address any remaining questions that come up as we go. So first things first, what is the difference and when might I as a business want to use one or both of these solutions? So they're really both designed to help you optimize your performance, optimize your business. The NetSuite planning and budgeting is really all about driving accurate budgeting and forecasting, about making better decisions using goal-orientated and driver-based plans. The planning and budgeting really says it in the name. It is for businesses that want to do planning, forecasting, looking into the future, and budgeting. That's really its essence. And with that, you're going to get some really nice reporting and analytics, including some dashboards, some PDFs, and the ability to create ad hoc reports as well. Now, the analytics warehouse, on the other hand, is really designed for operational excellence. So multiple different areas across the business, whether that's finance, operations, sales, or completely external data that might not be necessarily linked to your NetSuite at all. If you want to be able to create visualizations, build ad hoc reports, get insightful dashboards that are going to help you to be able to make impactful business decisions, that's really where the NetSuite Analytics Warehouse is going to come in. But we actually do see a lot of customers using both of these tools. They are two solutions that both offer robust analytics. They both augment your forecast reliability and make sure that your business can align and create and prepare with appropriate strategies, and they can be really complementary and work well alongside each other. So with that, let's focus down on each of the two different products. So starting off with planning and budgeting, or NSPB. If we think about ERP, NetSuite, your ERP platform, what that enables you to see is everything that has happened in the past. I can see through the rear view mirror. I can see everything that's happened right now. I can see through the side windows. But what it doesn't show me is what is coming up ahead. And that's exactly where NSPB comes in. And when we've got an uncertain environment like we're in right now, that's really important to be able to see and prepare for and adapt for what is coming in the future. So NetSuite's planning and budgeting module is actually built on Oracle's planning technology. So it is a proven and scalable solution, and it is also a highly flexible solution. It can really meet your specific business requirements. It is a 100% cloud-based solution, much like NetSuite, and it actually comes with a dynamic data sync to your NetSuite. So what that means is when you start to use NSPB, you're automatically going to have access to all of your actuals coming directly from your NetSuite. And what it will enable you to do is create your budgets, of course, create your forecasts, but it also is very useful for scenario planning and what-if analysis. And beyond that, you also are able to benefit from our Microsoft Office integration via an add-on called SmartView. And we'll take a look at what does that actually mean as we go through the presentation. But in essence, it means that you're going to be able to use this tool through an interface that you already know how to use. So what do we often hear from our customers who come to us and they're looking for a planning and budgeting solution? Well, some of the key challenges that we hear are our budgets and forecasts are disconnected from our NetSuite. They're disconnected from our general ledger. It's then taking us a long time to get our actual data, and therefore it's really difficult to actually adjust our financial models and come up with our scenario planning. We're spending a long time trying to just understand our budget variances, and therefore we don't have any time left for the actual scenario planning and analysis phase. And on top of all of that, because all of our data is siloed and in separate systems, it's just taking a really long time to gather the data and format the reports that we need. And therefore we're not doing the analysis that we really need to do as a business. In terms of technology requirements, we're often hearing from customers, we want to be able to sync seamlessly with NetSuite, with our ERP. We want to be able to view budget versus actuals with just a click of a button. We need to be able to run multiple scenarios, and we need to be able to do it quickly. We can't be spending weeks putting these things together. And then finally, we need some really nice reports, and we need access to real-time financial data. So all of these requirements, all of these challenges, these are exactly the kind of things that are going to make us look towards NSPB as a solution. So let's think a little bit more about what are some of the key challenges our customers are facing when it comes to planning and budgeting. Well, the vast majority of time when we speak to our customers, they are using Excel or an equivalent for their planning. So in terms of creating the budgets, preparing the budgets, creating their forecasts, doing all the reporting, it's oftentimes all done within Excel. And what that can look like is, well, the head office starts off with the current year budget. And then we might be a multi-subsidiary company. So we've now got to break that budget out into multiple separate Excel workbooks and Excel spreadsheets. Oh, and we've got to break it out into our income statement versus our cash flow versus our balance sheet. Then we might have to break it down even further because we've got all sorts of different teams and all sorts of different departments, and we do the budgeting at that level. And then we've got to email all of those different spreadsheets to all of the individual owners. Then once we've done that, they plug in their data. That's got to then go through an approvals process. At some point, it all needs to get sent back to head office, who have to consolidate all of that information, oftentimes spending weeks addressing errors and checking and making sure that everything lines up and everything matches, before finally you get to the point where you've got a completed budget that is ready to be presented again to head office. I actually spoke with a customer recently who had exactly this problem, and they said their Excel spreadsheet was so big they couldn't open it without crashing their computer. And that's not uncommon because there's a lot of data going into these budgets. So with NSPB, what we want to do is slim down that whole process. So the teams or department owners are going to be entering their budget information directly into NSPB. That can then go through an approvals process within NSPB. And that is then going to get sent back to head office, or automatically it will roll up for head office to be able to view it, and they will be able to review the completed budget. So you can see how we're really streamlining that whole process, cutting out a large number of steps, and importantly, getting rid of those multiple Excel spreadsheets, which are prone to errors and make life difficult if you're trying to open your spreadsheets on a laptop that doesn't have much space. So with that, let's have a think about, well, what does the planning and budgeting process typically look like within NSPB? How does that change versus using Excel? Well, straight away at point one, you're going to be at a huge advantage versus doing this externally in Excel, because you've got that on-demand or scheduled sync to your NetSuite data. From there, I'm going to be able to quickly and easily access my reporting, whether that is through dashboards or PDFs within the NSPB platform, or whether it's through that Smart View add-on that I've alluded to earlier. Once we've reviewed our reports and we've reviewed our variance analysis, I can then jump into the job of creating or updating my budget projections. And I can incorporate various different factors. So I might do some revenue planning, which could incorporate trend or driver-based planning. I could do top-down or bottom-up planning. I might then want to prepare some OpEx budgets. And again, that could be trend-based, or I might want to include drivers such as my workforce planning. Again, I can do this top-down and bottom-up, all from within NSPB. And finally, what a lot of our customers want to do is a degree of balance sheet and cash flow planning. So oftentimes we hear from customers that they want a three-way model, but they simply don't have the time and resources to do it. Well, within NSPB, we can actually build that into your model, into the system, so be able to have that three-way model as a standard. Because we've freed up a lot of time and effort in preparing those base budgets, we're now going to have a lot more time to focus on scenario planning and what-if versions. What if interest rates go up more than we expect? What if we enter that recession? What if we have the next financial crisis? All of these are very valid and possible questions, and it's really important as a business that we're able to plan and prepare for that. And finally, we can present everything back to our management team, to our board, to our stakeholders with really nice, intuitive, and easy to understand reporting. So with that, I'm going to jump into a little bit of a product demonstration. So the first point when it comes to using my NSPB is going to be accessing that reporting that I talked about. So that reporting, as I mentioned, could be through our Smart View add-on, or we might actually choose to start with some of the NSPB native reporting. So what you can see within NSPB is that I'm going to have access to some reporting and analytics, which means as soon as I log into NSPB, I can start to view key metrics. I can start to see how is my business performing in a specific moment in time. You'll be able to trust all of the numbers on this dashboard because it's pulling automatically from your NetSuite ERP. We're not having to rely on downloading, copying, pasting, editing. It's all just happening automatically. And on these reports, I'm able to view actual data, which in my demo environment is through to August, alongside forecasted or budget data from September onwards. So I can really start to understand how my business is progressing. These dashboards are all interactive. So if I wanted to drill down into a specific account, I can do that. If I wanted to change the viewpoint that I'm looking at, I can do that. So I can really start to get an understanding of my business direct from the dashboard, direct from my reports. I might also choose to look at some variance analysis reports, and these are all going to be available to me with the click of a button within NSPB. No need for that extraction, copying, pasting, and manipulating of data that you might be familiar with if you're using Excel. So from there, we've reviewed our dashboards, and let's say we've decided we need to update our budgets. Things have changed a little bit. In particular, I want to make some changes to my OpEx budget going forwards. So again, within the NSPB tool, I'm now going to be able to jump straight into what I want to be working on, which today is going to be my OpEx plans. So jumping over and looking at my OpEx plan, I've got various different pages available to me. Down at the bottom, you can see we're currently looking at my OpEx by department, but I've got various different planning pages available to me depending on how I want to go about preparing my budgets. You can see that I'm currently planning according to the US subsidiary. I'm looking at the sales department. So these dimensions and subsidiaries are going to directly match what you've got in your NetSuite ERP instance. So at the moment, I'm looking at the sales department. Perhaps I'm head of the sales team, head of the sales department, and I'm in charge of building these budgets from the bottom up. So the first thing I might make use of within NSPB is some of the inbuilt trending methodologies. So you can see here that I'm just doing a rolling forecast. So that makes it really easy for me to adjust my forecasts on a monthly basis. But maybe I think, well, you know what? Our payroll taxes have actually changed a lot within the last 3 months. There's been some changes in legislation. I think a 3-month rolling average might be more appropriate in that example. So I can actually drill in here. Oh, just give it a quick refresh. So I can actually drill in here. Sorry, my account seems to have locked out a little bit, so it won't let me drill in there. But what I'm actually able to do is typically go in and change that 6-month rolling forecast there to a 3-month rolling forecast. And what I also might say is, well, I'm going to do a 3-month rolling forecast, but also given those changes that have been made, I'm going to change it to a, let's say, negative 10%. So I can start to make these adjustments. What you would also, what was that, sorry?
I don't think your screen's changing.
Oh, sorry about that.
I'm watching. I'm like,
are you still looking at the dashboard, or are you looking at my OpEx
presentations?
Okay.
I mean, like the number 3.
Maybe that explains why my screen is slightly lagging as well. Okay, let me go ahead and reshare. Sorry about that, everybody.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Here we go. That should be better. Yes, perfect. Right. So what I was focusing on there is we've jumped to my OpEx planning page, and you can see that I had those different pages I was talking about. So my OpEx by department, my OpEx detail. So these are all my different planning pages. And I mentioned that I've got the different classifications. I was planning for the US subsidiary, and I was planning for the sales department. And these are all going to represent the segmentation that I've got within my NetSuite instance. So what I've started to talk about was the inbuilt trending methodology. So you can see here that I'm using a 6-month rolling forecast. And I talked a little bit about how I might want to go in and change those, although my screen does seem to be locking out a little bit. So typically what I'd be able to do here is change that to a 3-month rolling forecast. And then what I also did was I changed the uplift. So we originally had a 5% uplift, but what I can go in and do is say, I think that's going to be more of a 10%. Well, not an uplift, the opposite of an uplift. So I can make those changes. What I can also get NSAW to do is actually just do some manual planning. So if I want to select a manual planning here instead of a 6-month rolling forecast, and forgive me, my screen is actually not letting me click and update that. What I'm then able to do is just make some manual changes over here. So I might want to just manually type in that I think that's going to be 15,000. Or maybe I want to keep the existing ratios and distribution across the remaining budget months, but I think this overall number is going to be a little bit higher. So maybe I'll just change that to 100,000. And you can see that NSPB is actually able to update all of the other cells across that planning period. So we've got a lot of flexibility here in terms of how I can go about creating my budgets. And what I'm doing here is actually what's called a bottom-up planning. I'm doing it right at the bottom level. Now, I've talked a little bit during my presentation about the Smart View add-on and how you can actually use NSPB from within your familiar Excel or Microsoft Office interface. So everything I've done so far, I'm just in the standard NSPB environment. I'm logged in on a browser, just using a username and password, very similar to what I would be doing in NetSuite. But with NSPB, what I can actually do is access this same page, but within that familiar Excel environment. So if you are used to using Excel, if you know how to use Excel, if you've got a team that knows how to use Excel, you automatically know how to use NSPB. And from a change management perspective, that's really valuable, really powerful in terms of how fast can you start to realize value out of this system. So just to focus in on what exactly are we looking at here. I'm currently in Excel, so this is just your standard Excel that I've opened, but what we've added in is the Smart View add-on. And the Smart View add-on actually enables me to link my Excel to my NSPB environment. So you can see that the page I'm currently looking at, OPEX by department, is the same page that we've been working on within my NSPB browser. So everything that I've talked about doing within the browser, I can actually do within the familiar Excel user interface. So for example, if I want to take that 6-month rolling for payroll taxes, and here you can see how I can go in and change that. So I want to change it to a 3-month rolling, and I want to maybe change that across several different cells. I can make those changes in Excel, submit that data directly in Excel. And then if I go back to my main browser, just give it a quick refresh, you'll see that those updates that I just made in Excel have now updated in my NSPB environment. So a lot of our customers, when they're using NSPB, they're actually using that Excel user interface that they're familiar with. And this is a really basic example of how you could use it. But if you think about what that means, kind of the next layer up, it means if you know how to create ad hoc reports in Excel, maybe you know how to create a good pivot chart, you know how to create a graph, you're just familiar with it, you can now do all those things with NSPB. And that's really powerful in terms of creating reporting and being able to do ad hoc analysis on these numbers. So what we saw there was an example of my bottom-up planning. So all of this planning here is going to roll up to my overall OPEX budget, so across all of my departments and across all of my subsidiaries. But oftentimes customers may also want to do top-down planning. So within NSPB, I'm also able to take, let's say, my entire OPEX budget for a particular department, or even across all of my departments. In this case, we're focusing on the marketing department. And let's say I want to take that overall number, 270,600, and say, you know what, I think we need to be a little bit more aggressive. I want to adjust that number across the board. But I want to keep the existing proportion, the split between the months, the split between the different GL accounts that my team leads have put in with their bottom-up forecasts. So with that, I'm actually able to use what's called a grid spread, which is a top-down adjustment. So I can say, NSPB, I want you to calculate a -5 or a 5% reduction across the board and spread it proportionally across all of my planning periods and all of my planning attributes. And you're able to do that with just a matter of clicks. So this is really powerful, where the finance team might just have that final overview and we just want to make some changes at the last minute. I don't have to do it all one by one. I certainly don't need to use a separate Excel workbook to do it. I can just do it with a matter of clicks. I might even take things one step further and make use of functionality that's called predictive planning. Now, this is where I can actually get NSPB to do some learning for me. So in this case, NSPB is looking, well, here's the overall trend of my actuals. And based off that information, NSPB is letting me know what the most likely outcome for my financials is going forwards. And I can see, how does that compare to what I've budgeted? Are we being too aggressive? Are we being not aggressive enough? And what we can then start to use this information for is creating those different what-if scenarios. So I might have my own base version of the budget, but I might have NSPB's perhaps more conservative version of the budget. And we can report against both of them. And ultimately, you can actually have as many what-if versions as you like. Now, we focus there just on the OPEX planning, but of course, you might also do your revenue planning with NSPB, and a lot of our customers do choose to have that three-way model, or do the cash flow and balance sheet planning as well. And once we've done all of that, that's automatically going to roll up into our key financial statements, and I will be able to view my actual data, pulling directly from NetSuite alongside my budgeted data within a single report. I can view those reports in a table format like we've got on my screen here, but I might also choose to view them as dashboards like we saw earlier. Or finally, what we see a lot of our customers doing is using that Smart View add-on again. So whether that's through Excel, as we saw the example of, or through other MS Office tools like PowerPoint or Word, you can start to create some ad hoc reports. You could put together management reporting or board packs. and they are going to pull data directly from your NSPB. And when it comes to the next month and you make adjustments to your budget, you make changes like we've just seen, all you're going to have to do is hit refresh, and your management reporting packs are now ready to go again. So before we move on to the next section, just want to wrap up on that NSPB piece. What NSPB is all about is giving you the tools to streamline and slim down and speed up your planning and budgeting process. By having that streamlined process, you will have more time to focus on the value add activities of that what if planning, scenario planning, preparing for the unexpected. Because if we can prepare and if we can see what's coming, we're going to be in a much stronger position to make informed business decisions, to adapt accordingly. And it's those kind of decisions that are going to enable us as a business to really thrive in that uncertain economic environment. So with that, let's move on to the second product that we're going to be talking about today, which is our NetSuite Analytics Warehouse. So when I think about NetSuite Analytics Warehouse, I really like to think about the human brain. So if you think about how our brains work, every day we are going to be presented with a huge amount of information. We're seeing things all around us. We're hearing things other people are saying. We're hearing background noise. We are taking in information through what we touch, through what we taste, through what we smell. And our brain is what allows us to consolidate all of that information and turn it into a meaningful narrative. It's what enables us to understand language. It's what enables us to make proactive decisions. It's what enables us to do strategic and analytical thinking. And that's really what NSAW is doing for your data. If we think about the amount of data that businesses these days are capturing, for better or for worse, there's a whole lot of data out there. But if we can't turn that data into an actual narrative, if we can't turn it into a story that enables us to make decisions, then that data is worthless. So NSAW is the tool that allows us to create that narrative. So before I jump into NSAW itself, I just want to touch on the NetSuite Analytics product portfolio. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with our core NetSuite saved searches and reports. Now, these can be really useful, used typically for running your day-to-day business, looking at your daily processes, your daily operations, and of course, accessing your key financial statements. Now, they present you with real-time drillable data and quick visibility into your current NetSuite ERP. But the difficulty is, first of all, we're limited to just NetSuite data. And secondly, if any of you have tried to play around with, configure, and customize some of these reports, you may have found that it's actually quite difficult to join data from different tables. So for example, if I'm looking at an item record and I want to join it with some data on a transactional record, that's not always the easiest thing to do. So that's when we move to the second generation of NetSuite Analytics. We brought in the Suite Analytics workbook, and that really offered some enhanced usability, so you could get some improved visualizations, some pivot charts, and nicer graphs. And importantly, it did allow you to have much more ability in terms of joining tables across data sets. But it was still limited to just your NetSuite data. And we know that more and more businesses these days are not solely reliant on their financial data. So that's where the Suite Analytics Connect comes in. And that is our ODBC or JDBC connector that allowed you to query your NetSuite data and enables you to then seamlessly connect your NetSuite data with third-party solutions where you could use that data alongside other data. But what we have now introduced with NSAW is a full-blown BI and data warehouse tool. So this tool is going to allow you to create robust data visualizations. It's going to give you a really nice user-friendly user interface in which to do that. And importantly, it will give you the space that you need to consolidate and blend data from multiple external sources. So you're not just limited to your NetSuite. You might be bringing in Salesforce CRM data. You might be bringing in Google Analytics data to track social media engagement. And with this tool, you'll get pre-built content and the ability to connect easily to external third parties. So like the Google Analytics, like the Salesforce I just mentioned. And importantly, NSAW actually comes inclusive of that Suite Analytics Connect. So this really is an all-in-one tool. So why would you want to look at NetSuite Analytics Warehouse? Well, first of all, one thing we often hear from our customers is that they are housing and storing data from multiple different sources in multiple different platforms. And it can be really difficult to manage that data. It can certainly be difficult to combine that data and use that data and analyze that data in a meaningful way. On top of that, it can actually be difficult to access the data, in particular with, say, historical transactions. It can be difficult to combine that with your actuals. Oftentimes, businesses are moving from one product to another over the lifetime of the business. And it's really important that we're still able to access the data that we need to understand how our business has progressed over time. If we can't access our data and we can't use our data in the most effective way, that can really make it difficult for us to get those meaningful business insights, for us to really get that narrative and understand the story that enables us to make strategic and informed decisions. And finally, it can be costly and time consuming to do all of this. So even if you as a business are using an external BI platform, even if you are bringing in your NetSuite data using the Suite Analytics Connect and combining it with external data sources, there can be large costs associated with ETL, extraction, transformation, and loading. You can have to manage multiple vendors, multiple implementation teams. And even then, it can still be difficult to access the data that you need. So these are really some of the key challenges that NSAW is looking to address.
There is a question, Hannah, from Sophie.
Yes.
It relates to synchronizing data like Salesforce. If it does get synchronized, would it actually go back into NetSuite at any point in time, given Salesforce live system? One of the main challenges is that they don't have the historical recorded anywhere.
So if we were to link our Salesforce data to our NSAW account, we would be bringing in the data to the NSAW tool. So you'd be able to report on that Salesforce data from NSAW, but it wouldn't push that data directly through to NetSuite. So it would just be from Salesforce into NSAW. Your NetSuite would also be coming into NSAW, which sits separately and above, and then you'd be able to mash up that data and report on the two together.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. So continuing on, I've mentioned a couple of times the ability to use multiple data sources and mash up multiple data sources. So a couple of scenarios that we often hear from our customer is, well, I've got my NetSuite data in my ERP. I've got my external applications, my Salesforce, like Sophie's just raised, but also I've got some historical data, whether that be in my old ERP platform, whether that be sitting in Excel somewhere. NSAW is going to give us the tool that we need to not only mash up that data, bring it all together in one place, but it also gives us the brain to be able to interpret that and come up with a narrative and the story that actually gives us the business insights that we need to make strategic decisions off the back of it. So what do you actually get with NetSuite Analytics Warehouse? I alluded to this all-in-one solution when I was going through the stairway at the beginning. Well, first of all, NSAW is a fully cloud-based solution. It is a data warehouse. So you'll get the Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse, a very flexible, scalable, and proven solution. You'll also get a business intelligence solution, which is the Oracle Analytics Cloud. But on top of that, as I mentioned, it comes inclusive of the Suite Analytics Connect ODBC connector. So you already got that link to your NetSuite data. And then on top of that, we've actually included a whole heap of pre-built content. So that includes the NetSuite data pipeline, which is actually bringing over the data, bringing over specific record and transaction types from your NetSuite through to your NSAW. And we provide some pre-built content, so some pre-built visualizations, pre-built dashboards, pre-built workbooks. What does all of that mean to you as a customer? Well, what we've seen over in the US, where this product has been available for a little bit longer, is actually customers are seeing time to value increase by or decrease by up to 6 times. So 6 times faster time to value, and a potential savings of around 50%. So these are big differences. And let's have a think about why and where does that savings potential come from. So if you were to think about going for a DIY approach, so without NSAW, let's say you as a business want to start using a business intelligence platform. So of course, we're starting with our NetSuite solution. And on top of that, we've now got to get a BI tool, so something like a Tableau or a Power BI. But that's not enough. You've actually now got to get the Suite Analytics Connect to enable yourself to query the NetSuite data. And then you might want to also add in a data warehouse where you can actually store the data. And on top of that, you may need to work with an ETL partner to do the extraction, transformation, and loading of data. Now, one of my colleagues in the solution consulting team actually used to work as a consultant, and he said he worked with a business which was pretty much doing this, so trying to link their ERP with a BI tool. And he was involved in this process in the middle of the ETL. He said it actually took them around 11 months, so almost a year, to get all of this up and running to the point where the customer was able to use the BI platform and access their data. Now, if we compare that with NSAW, you're actually going to get everything all in one. So when you buy NSAW, you get the Suite Analytics Connect, you get the data warehouse, and that ETL step has actually already been done for you with a large number of NetSuite records and transaction types. And you've already got some pre-built visualizations on top of that. So just to think about that a different way and what that means as an end result, if you're doing this yourself, the DIY approach, you're going to be spending the vast majority of your time extracting data, managing data, staying on top of the security of your data. You've then got to spend a bit of time actually creating the visualizations, and that only leaves you a small amount of time for the important part, which is the analyze phase. Now with NSAW, on the other hand, you're able to turn it on and configure it with pre-built data pipeline, with a pre-built data model, with a pre-built security framework. And then you can spend the bulk of your time on that analysis phase, which is really where we're going to get value, which is really where we're going to be able to start to make those strategic business decisions. And then on top of that, as I've mentioned a couple of times, you're able to extend the NSAW platform really nice and easily. So if we want to bring in those external data sources, whether it's Salesforce, Google Analytics, Google Drive, Dropbox, whatever it might be, and I can start to mash up those data sources with my NetSuite data. So let's have a little think about, okay, well, what does all that mean, that pre-built data pipeline, pre-built visualizations? Well, let's start with the data pipeline. The pre-built data pipeline means that for, I think it's 63 transaction types, or 63 record types, sorry, NetSuite has already built the connection between NetSuite and NSAW, which means you will be able to access those records within NSAW immediately, as soon as you've got access to your NSAW. So when I'm building a visualization and I want to access, let's say, my NetSuite fulfillment information, I simply need to go into NSAW and add that data. I don't need to do any of the ETL steps. I don't need to manipulate the data in any way. It's just there for me, ready to use. The pre-built content, so the pre-built visualizations, the pre-built metrics and KPIs, as soon as you are up and running with NSAW, you're going to have access to a shared folder. And that shared folder is going to give you access to various different visualizations. So you can see here that I've got access to some overview dashboards, financial dashboards, and also some more industry-specific dashboards like manufacturing or projects and support. Within each of these folders here, I'm then able to access multiple workbooks, multiple visualizations. So within my financials folder, I've now got access to several pre-built workbooks and visualizations. And then each of those workbooks includes multiple dashboards, multiple visualizations, multiple metrics. So as soon as you're up and running, you're going to be able to start analyzing your data, getting valuable insight, and making those strategic decisions. Compared to, I was telling you about my colleague who worked on something similar and it took them 11 months to get it up and running. I actually heard that one of our customers who went live recently, or I should say who purchased recently NSAW, they were able to access their visualizations with their data from NetSuite within a couple of hours of getting access to the NSAW account. So compare that to months. And it doesn't stop there with those pre-built and shared folders. What NetSuite has actually also been working on is what we've called some Suite Success add-ons. So that is some industry-focused and industry-specific pre-built content as well. So we've got some pre-built content for warehouse software, so software businesses, for warehouse, for wholesale distribution businesses, and also for retail businesses. And you're able to download those add-ons directly from your NetSuite, plug them into your NSAW, and access those straight away. And then finally, I've talked a little bit about mashing in external data sources. So that could be as simple as bringing in CSV data, but it can also mean extending your NSAW to speak to external platforms. And NSAW actually comes with a large number of pre-built connectors, including some very commonly used solutions like Dropbox, Google Analytics, Google Drive, Salesforce CRM. So I can actually quickly and easily access all those external applications with just a few clicks of a button. So with that, let's jump into a quick demonstration. So this time, opening up my NSAW account. So from within my NSAW platform, I'm going to be able to view a whole host of visualizations. Now, these could be the pre-built visualizations that come out of the box, or they could be visualizations that I myself have created. Now, let's say I'm working as part of the sales department and I get a call from the sales manager and they say, hey, Hannah, I've noticed that our web store sales have dropped significantly in the last month. And I want you to take a look at that and see what's going on and come up with some potential solutions. So what I can do then is start to use my NSAW to try and get some insights out of the system. So if I start off with my ANZ retail sales overview.
There is a question, Hannah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is NSAW warehousing fully compatible with external BI visuals like Power BI?
I don't know whether that comes out of the box. I've certainly heard other customers talking about potentially linking the two platforms. So it would depend on exact requirements, exactly what we wanted to see happen. But certainly that is something other customers have been looking into. It would just depend on the exact use case, I think.
Thank you.
All right, so here I am looking at my retail sales overview. You can see it's sort of like a dashboard, but it's much more visually appealing than what you might just get out of core NetSuite. And I can straight away see exactly what my sales manager is talking about. If I look at my sales by channel down here in the bottom left, I can straight away see that sharp drop off in my retail sales. So I want to look into that. I want to analyze what's going on a bit further. Maybe I just want to filter this dashboard actually and only focus on that web store data. So I can do that with just a few clicks and you'll see that my dashboard now refreshes and I'm only focusing on that web store data. I can also include multiple different visualizations and dashboards within a single workbook. So I can really start to build up a story and build up a narrative. And what you'll also notice is some of these visualizations here are very different to what you might be used to getting out of core NetSuite. So I can see just by looking at this that New South Wales is our biggest sales region. Nothing too noticeable there, but it might help me filter down when I'm focusing later to kind of work out where I should be focusing my time. And then finally, if I view my hotspot versus other visualization, I can see that I'm looking at Australia versus New Zealand. And I can see actually for both countries, I've got that significant drop off. So nothing that stands out as obvious here. I think I'll have to start doing a little bit of my own work to see what's going on, to get to the bottom of this. So what I'll do now is I'll actually start to create my own visualization. So from within an NSAW, I'm going to say I want to create a new workbook. And because I'm going to be using NetSuite data, I can really easily just search for the transaction type that I want to use. And with just a few clicks of a button, I can access that NetSuite data. So that's part of that pre-built pipeline. And from here, I can start dragging and dropping key pieces of information. So if I want to look at the total amount of my cash sales, and I'll just drag that onto my visualization, and I probably want to view that over time. So I'll want to view that over each fiscal period. So we'll look for fiscal period name. And importantly, we only want to focus on Australian data. So I might go in and add the subsidiary name as a filter up top. You can see how easily I'm doing this drag and dropping. It's a really nice user-friendly interface. And maybe I'll also go in and focus only on the web store sales. So if I search for my classification, and I'll add that as another filter, if I can spell things correctly. So just dragging and dropping, changing the visualization to make sure I'm looking at the appropriate data. So we can see that drop off there. I'll actually change that, I think, to fiscal period name instead of fiscal quarter name, because that will just be a little bit easier to analyze. And we can see that's that very obvious drop off that our sales manager was talking about there. From there, I might want to do a little bit of analysis, and maybe I want to look at the shipping address, and maybe I'll look at the shipping address state and see, is it state specific? Is it kind of located to one specific region? So I can break it out by a different color perhaps. And I'll change maybe the visualization. So you can see we've got all sorts of pre-built visualizations here, including potentially a stacked bar chart. Now, nothing's standing out there, nothing too obvious. Maybe if I filter it down to perhaps the top 10, maybe the top 10 regions, the top 10 states, see if anything stands out. And there I can see that the total amount of cash sales kind of looks like it's dropping across all of my regions. So that's really interesting. Something's going on there. I want to drill into that in a little bit more detail. It doesn't seem to be isolated to one specific location. So now I need to start thinking about, well, what could be causing this? How can I kind of look into this in a little bit more detail? Well, maybe I know we've actually started publishing reviews on our website, on our e-commerce website back in September. So maybe if I start to have a look at those reviews, that could give me some insight. So if I had a look on my e-commerce website and I can see all of the reviews available to me, what I'm actually able to do is take those reviews off my ecom website, bring them into NSAW via CSV, and then start to analyze those reviews. So what I've actually done here is I've added that data as a CSV, and I've created something called a data flow. So within the NSAW tool, a data flow is where I'm actually going to manipulate and edit the data to create mashed up data sets. And I can do all of this with point and click. So looking at my item reviews data flow, what I've done is I've taken the reviews that I've pulled directly from my website. You can see there the products that I'm selling and the reviews they're associated with. And I've actually said to NSAW, I want you to analyze the sentiment. So I've said, I want you to look at the review text. So this is this text here. And I want you to let me know whether that review is positive, negative, or neutral. So a little bit of AI coming into play here. And I want you to add that as a column. And then I want that to be my new data set. So that's what I've done here with this data flow. I've taken the reviews off my website. I've added in that emotion. So now what I'm able to do is use this data set, which is HB item reviews, to build a new visualization. So going to my data set and looking at my HB item reviews, now I can start to build more visualizations. And what you'll see over here on the right is that brain NSAW coming into play, because it's prompting, here's some visualizations that you might find useful, that you might find interesting. So I don't even necessarily need to manually create these myself. So just scrolling down these suggested visualizations, I think this one looks particularly interesting. The record counts by emotion and by item name. I can see straight away I've got a lot of negative reviews for this particular product. That really jumps out, that stands out, that's something for me to look at. And what I also might be interested in is maybe the trend of how my reviews have kind of been progressing over time. So I'll pull that on as another visualization. But I think I'll change that one actually, instead of looking at the year, maybe I'll look at that month on month. So I'll just, again, start to do some dragging and dropping here. And we can see how my reviews here have spiked in February. So again, that's something a little bit unusual, something I might want to focus on. And then finally, I want to see, well, what was the emotion? So was it positive, negative, or neutral? I want to break that out by color. And now I'm really starting to get a story. Now I'm really starting to see that suddenly in February, we had a large number of negative reviews for this specific item. So now I can take this information. I can go back to my sales manager and say, hey, I think this is the problem. We're publishing reviews on our website and they're not good. And that might have caused the negative drop off in the month of March. And importantly, I can also take this information and send it to the quality management team and say, hey guys, could you have a look at this? Something seems to be going wrong with this specific item in this specific month. What's happened? And maybe the quality management team, they're not so good at looking at metrics. They don't like looking at graphs. They just want the text. They just want to be told what to do. So what I can also get NSPB to do, NSAW, sorry, I keep mixing them up in my head. What I can also get NSAW to do is represent these visualizations in text. So I can actually get NSAW to analyze the chart that I've created and write it in English for me. So now I can just kind of copy and paste chunks of that, send it to the quality management team, and get them to act on it accordingly. So that was a very whistle-stop tour of NSAW. Hopefully you can see it's actually a really powerful product. I can easily build visualizations. I can start to incorporate AI, machine learning, some really powerful tools. And it's really user-friendly. If you compare what I just did there with the dragging and dropping to what you can do in core NetSuite, hopefully you can really see a difference and how quickly I would be able to adopt and start to see value out of this product. So just,
Yep, we have a question, a couple of questions, knowing that there's 3 minutes before we end, because this will automatically shut down.
So I've got one slide left of mine, and then the rest will be questions.
Nah, all good. So this is from Dennis. We have historical financial data from another ERP, and which has a different chart of accounts. So how would NSAW or NSPB map the relevant chart of account structure, accounts, divisions, departments for comparatives?
Yeah, so without speaking out of turn, I think that would depend exactly on the implementation team would be able to help with that specifically. But what I would suggest, or what I would imagine would be done, would be actually using that data flow functionality. So you saw where I added in the sentiment and I added in columns. That's where you're going to be able to link one column in one data set to another column in another data set, line them up, match them, and let NSAW know, well, this GL account in this equals that GL account in that. So you're able to do all of that from within the tool, just using point and click.
So basically you can do a one-to-one, one-to-many, multiple-to-many sort of mappings.
I would imagine so, yeah. Again, it would depend on the exact implementation, but that would be the approach I think would be most logical.
Cool. And a question from Marvin on the, does NSAW have any visuals that has any write-back capabilities back into NetSuite?
It doesn't as standard. That's not to say it couldn't be something that could be added in with a bit of implementation or scoping. So that one I think would be dependent on the exact requirements and use case.
Cool. You got 45 seconds left. Go.
All right, we've got a matter of seconds, so I'll wrap it up for you with just a recap. With NSAW, you are getting that all-in-one solution. Don't estimate the value of how much time and effort that is going to save you and how you'll be able to get value sooner. The brain engine is really going to give you the ability to get the narrative, get the story, and that's what enables you to make those business decisions that helps your business perform. If you want to increase your profits, if you want to growth, you need to be able to make those decisions. And finally, it's simple. It's easy to use. As an end user, it's quick to learn, it's quick to use, it's quick to get value out of. It means you get more out of your data, but also more out of the people working for you, the people using your data. So ultimately, you're getting more out of your assets.
Cool. Thank you, Hannah. Great work. Probably 5 seconds left. Any questions, send me an email.